Welcome back to Shadow the Hedgehog reads Shadow Black. I'm Shadow the Hedgehog, and this is Chapter 4. The next morning, the peasants had just left the cottage to get back to work at the bakery. Shadow Black and Shadow White promised them that they would take care of the house while they were out. After the peasants left, they began their housework by washing the breakfast dishes. The former prince washed the dishes in the sink, whereas the white Chow dried them and placed them back in the cupboard. You know, Chow White, I think we make a great pair, Shadow Black said. Chow White blushed, but bowed her head. Outside the cottage, King Eggman, disguised as a peddler, looked inside to see his stepson doing some chores with the Chow. "Well, Shadow Black," he said, "today is the day you will meet your fate." Shadow Black was sweeping the floors, and Shadow White was dusting the dust off of some furniture until there was a knock on the door. He heard it and said, "I'll get it," and went to answer the door. As soon as it opened, the peddler looked at the prince with a smile on his face. King Eggman disguised his voice and made it higher, so he would sound like a woman.
"Good morning,"
she said. "Good morning," Shadow Black greeted. "What brought you here in this forest?"
"Well, I was trying to sell my apples for the people in the village, but nobody wanted them,"
the peddler said. By then, Shadow Black began to feel sorry for her.
"From what I heard, you must be a prince."
"Well, yes," Shadow Black answered, "I am."
"Well, in that case," she said, "I have a special apple for you."
The king in disguise took out a red apple from the basket and revealed it to the prince.
"Have a bite of this delicious fruit,"
the peddler said. While it looked really good, the prince remembered that he just had breakfast earlier. "No, thank you," he said. "I'm not hungry." He turned down the offer. This made the peddler determined for him to eat the apple.
"Nonsense, nonsense," she insisted. "Come now, you can't turn down a nice-looking apple."
Not wanting to start a debate with the elder, Shadow Black came in. "I guess I could have a bite," he said.
"That's the spirit,"
the peddler said, as she gave it to him. Coincidentally, Chow White heard what the peddler was saying. She knew that it was none other than King Eggman. When she saw what he was doing, she hurried to Shadow Black and stopped him from eating the apple. "What is it, Chow White?" he asked his friend. She tried to warn him that the apple he was going to bite was poison, only to be interrupted by his stepfather.
"Pay no attention to that Chow, my dear,"
said the peddler.
"Just have a bite of this apple, and you won't regret it."
Shadow Black looked at the apple before turning to his Chow friend. "Tell you what," he said, "I'll just take one bite of this apple and show you that it's not bad. Okay?" Even though she was reluctant to have her dear friend eat the poisoned apple, Shadow White agreed. "Good deal," Shadow Black said, petting her head. He looked at the apple for a minute or two, until he took a bite of it. Surprisingly enough, it tasted like a normal apple. He turned to look at his Chow friend and said, "See? It's not so bad." All of a sudden, Shadow Black began to feel that the chunk of apple got stuck in his throat. He grabbed his throat and started to gasp for air. Chow White was starting to get scared for the prince, whereas the peddler began to smile, a sinister smile. He tried to cough it up from his throat to get it out, but he was unsuccessful. He gasped for breath one last time before he collapsed on the floor, dropping a bit of an apple in the process. Now fearing for his safety, Chow White checked on Shadow Black, who had now fallen into a deep sleep. King Eggman removed his peddler costume and revealed himself. "Now I will be the most handsome of all the land," he declared. "He will never get into my way again. Sweet dreams, Shadow Black." He laughed evilly. as he left the scene of the crime. Shadow White hugged the permanently asleep prince, all the while sobbing. She began to scream as loud as she could as her way to call for help. Little did Shadow Black know, the White Shadow also had the ability to screech like a bat. Their screeching was so loud that it could be heard a mile away. Meanwhile, at the village, Cream, Orange, and Cheese were allowing the customers into the bakery. Suddenly, Cheese heard Shadow White screeching from the distance. He got his owner's attention.
"What is it, Cheese?"
Cream asked. The child told the young rabbit that he heard Shadow White's cry for help. He also believed that Shadow Black might be in danger.
"Shadow Black in danger?"
Cream asked. Her pet Shadow nodded his head. She was in a state of shock that she couldn't believe what Cheese was saying.
"Come on, Cheese. We better get up first and head for home right away."
They went inside the shop to tell the others about what Cheese just heard. A few minutes later, Cream, Orange, her pet Chow, and the rest of the group dashed their way home to the cottage. They were very worried for Shadow Black's safety. Once they made it back home, they opened the door and saw a terrible sight. They found the prince lying down on the floor, asleep. Chow White crying, an apple that had been bitten. The poor Chow had been crying for what felt like hours. She was devastated of what happened to her dear friend. When Amy walked up toward her, she asked,
"Shadow White, what happened? Why is Shadow Black on the floor?"
Chow White spoke so rapidly and heartbroken that the peasants can barely understand her.
"Slow down, Shadow White,"
Teal said.
Can you tell us what happened?"
The White Chow took a few deep breaths before she could explain again. Since they also had experience with the Chow, they were able to understand what Chow White was saying.
"You're trying to warn Shadow Black about the apple, but King Eggman made him do this?"
Tails asked. She nodded her head and started to cry. Cream hugged Chow White to comfort her. Cream got down on her knees and hugged both Chow. Seeing these little creatures cry couldn't break the young rabbit's heart. Anyway, she comforted both Chow and gave them just a bit of hope.
"Don't worry, Shadow White,"
Cream said.
"We'll get him out of it. I'm sure we will."
Because of an apple chunk got lodged in his throat, Shadow Black was snoring louder than the previous night. Once they put the sleeping prince to Lavinia's bed, the peasants had him lying down on his back with his hands folded. They began to think of how they could wake him up from his enchanted slumber. Sonic said,
"Since you managed to wake him up with your mystic melody last night, why don't you try that again, Lavinia?" "Okay,"
Lavinia said. She summoned the same transverse flute.
"Here goes nothing."
She began to play the same mystic melody, hoping to awaken sleeping Shadow Black. However, the prince kept on snoozing.
"Strange,"
Lavinia said.
"It worked last night."
They tried other plans on getting the prince out of his slumber. First, they tickled his feet, but that didn't work. Next, they shook the bed. They shook the black cat's bed, but that didn't work either. Finally, they took a bucket of cold water and poured it on his head. Alas, Shadow Black just kept on snoring away. Nothing we do seems to be working, Knuckles groaned. What should we do?
"I guess we're going to have to wait until he wakes up,"
Sonic suggested, shrugging his shoulders. As the prince continued to sleep, Shadow the Hedgehog continued to read. They waited and waited. He said as the time progressed, day after day, week after week, month after month, and the poor prince continued to sleep. Shadow Black kept on sleeping, but his snoring was not as loud as it was a few weeks ago. Shadow White gave his hand a reassuring squeeze before she got up from the bed. Shadow White made a promise to herself that she would never leave her beloved friend's side. the ultimate life form said, she began to build a cocoon so she would be with the prince for a long time. So she built a cocoon around herself. As soon as she was done, she began her long rest. She hoped that one day the curse would be lifted and Shadow Black would awaken. And this is the end of Chapter 4. Stay tuned for the 5th and final chapter of Shadow the Hedgehog reads Shadow Black.